In today's episode, we go through some bolt-action playstyles, some army building, and the Canadian Army in the D-Day campaign book.
Welcome to Trident Wargaming, a podcast dedicated to all aspects of tabletop wargaming. Your hosts are Bill and Andy.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Trident Wargaming, episode number 10. Today, we're going to talk about some more bolt action. With me is a bolt action buddy of mine, Mr. Jason Hatfield. How's it going?
Good.
Excellent. Hanging in there, getting some hobby time in?
Yep.
Excellent.
Sure.
Yeah. I know I've been doing the same, so that's pretty much all we're doing is painting right now.
Painting, building, wishing I was painting, building more, buying lots.
Yeah, me too.
Not painting enough.
Oh, it's funny. Me and Jason tend to bounce games back and forth with each other. We're like, hey, check this out. Next, we both bought it. So, but it's pretty good. So yeah, today's episode, a couple of topics here. We're pretty much going to be talking about going about and building how you build your armies in the game. So for anybody who's listening or is getting into bolt action, I'm trying to give them an idea of kind of our thought process on just building armies, and what we're looking for, what we're deciding to take. Is there a style? Is there a narrative? There's also things to think about when building armies, and we'll get into that. So that'll be another topic. And then towards the end of the episode, we will be talking about the new British Canadian campaign sector book for D-Day that just came out not too long ago. And I know this book has actually changed probably Jason's army that he's built in the past. So this will be a pretty good section to check out some differences and whatnot. So I'm a bit excited for it. I know you are, Jason.
Yeah.
We've been bouncing ideas back and forth all day, so it's pretty good. But yeah, so started off. So historical visits non-historical play. So I know we've been playing a lot of just generic kind of reinforced platoons. I know I've been using a lot of those platoons. I haven't really been using too many theater selectors.
Yeah.
So
the cool thing about bolt action that I appreciate is that it gives you the option for both fairly easily.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do kind of a more generic list with guys from that country, that army, and apply them helter-skelter according to what you like or what you think is cool. And that's really fun, and it's kind of a like a 40K-esque game in that sense. But also you can really dive deep into some of the historical aspects through the theater list, which can be really fun. One of the challenges with the theater list is that if your opponent is playing, say, a late war list and you're playing an early war list, you're at a bit of a disadvantage right off the hop, just from weaponry and
equipment.
And
yeah, and it's with those games, and it's funny because I know last time I talked to one of the gentlemen here in the community, and he has never really played with us, but he was asking so many questions about what do you guys play? Do you guys play early war? Do you guys play late? Is it just to bring whatever to the game kind of the match? I know the gentleman, he plays a lot more of the campaign and historical part of it. So when it comes down to playing the game like that, it's definitely worth talking with your opponent. I know you and me, Jason, a lot of times will set up like scenarios or play like, okay, what do you want to play? You know, do we want to do mid? Do we want to early? You know,
Yeah.
do we want to play one of the scenarios out of the books? You know,
Which personally is my favorite way to play. I like that, you know, going at it from the more historical point of view.
mm-hmm.
Uh, but it is something you have to, or you'll have more fun or success with if you set it up that way, as opposed to a pickup game at a store,
Yeah.
where generally it's just better to bring a general list and go at it.
No, for sure. And it's like, you know, sometimes you gotta ask that question of, you know, can the game, like, does the game have the ability to handle the historic lists? You know,
Yep.
I think they do pretty good with the amount of information and the amount of theater selectors and campaign books and special rules out there.
Yeah. One thing I hear sometimes is that you know, people complain that any game, although this isn't accurate or this isn't accurate or that thing isn't exactly accurate, but you got to remember that wargaming is abstract to start with. Most of the scenarios that you're going to play aren't exactly as they would be set out historically. You're obviously not the person that was in command at the time. You know, you don't have to think about, in the war game setting, you don't have to think about your lines of retreat or your you know, your supply situation, or
Mm-hmm.
whether or not you guys had breakfast that morning. You know, there's a lot you don't. So there's really a lot in, you know, real warfare that isn't in any game. So it's all abstracted. So you just have to. I know some guys really want to be, and I'm a history nerd, really want to be digging their nails into it, and but you have to let go at a certain point. And I think this game does a pretty good balance of playability versus historical accuracy. And I think maybe rather than historical accuracy, historical themed might be better.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, and for instance, in BoltAction, artillery is an option that you can take, but on the size of the battlefield, if that you play on, generally a 6x4 or even an 8x4, you know, each inch might represent, you know, 5 feet. If you're that close to the artillery, or if the enemy's that close to your artillery, something's already gone wrong. That's not to say that artillery, you know, units aren't getting in a fight, but they're certainly not rolled up to the front right beside an infantry squad for an attack. They're, you know, 2 miles, you know, 2 kilometers behind the lines.
Yeah, and the game gives the option for that, right? And it's the nice thing about it, and even with like armor, like your tanks, it's not like other games where you can have 3 or 4 choices of this particular unit, right? It's literally you got one choice of it, and that's it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's to give the game a little bit of the element of the actual war, right? So
yeah, it has the theme,
yep,
but not necessarily the exact accuracy.
exactly.
Nobody likes a rivet counter. Don't do it.
No, I hear you. So with lists and like with building armies and whatnot, you also have to think, you know, is a historical list, is there the possibility of winning with those lists? In my opinion, there is. A lot of the games, you know, the games are set, or the scenarios are set with the purpose of like there is going to be a victorious general, you know, or it's going to turn out to be a contested or drawn combat kind of thing, right? So definitely there is using the historical theater lists. Yeah, for sure. I'm sure players have done it where they've taken those theater selectors that are specific for a certain time, and they do pretty good with them.
Yeah, and
So,
especially when you're going like theater list versus like theater list, as in, they're kind of from the same area, but opposing sides, or
yeah.
from the same conflict but opposing sides. That they're generally balanced out that way, and some of the list are hyper specialized, which when it comes against a specific other type of army can be devastating.
Mm-hmm.
But also there are challenges and limitations usually with the list, and the game does a pretty good job of give and take. So you might have a big advantage in one aspect, but you'll be giving something up for it somewhere else. And that's one of the advantages that kind of generic list have, is that they're way more flexible. But you certainly can win, I think.
Oh, for sure in any game. So yeah, so with that in mind, guess we'll kind of go into some points that I have here for when we're building the armies. So myself, like when I'm building an army, I tend to, if it's just a drop-in game or just a game with a buddy, I tend to go with just the generic reinforced platoon. Depending on the scenario or what you're doing, it could be theater selector. I know I've been looking at some for the Stalingrad stuff we've been talking about in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's a couple things to think of. I know Jason will have some other thoughts on this too. So one of the questions I have is kind of what I go through my thought process is, do I have enough infantry for the mission to grab objectives? And as Jason knows, I tend to play a lot of heavy infantry armies, right? I mean, the game is based on the infantry, right?
Yeah.
But when I'm fielding 60 Frenchmen at the front line, it's a fair amount of models to put on the board and to grab objectives. One of the downsides with that thought in mind is usually your infantry are not the higher experienced infantry, right? Because and Jason could attest to this too. I think we have how many players that play veterans in the community. There's a lot of guys that do, right? So
Me being one of them with my 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion.
yeah, and it's actually pretty good, because like myself, going with either regulars or inexperienced, going against these guys with these veteran lists, like they're good fights regardless. It might be hard to knock them out, but the fights are just always good, right? It's a long lasting battle.
Yeah.
So depending on what you want, like in your list, Jason, you have small units,
And I have to, because they're so expensive that if I tried to go for a large unit, I would be able to field 2 or 3 in say 1,000-point game, and that's it. But at the same time, I do take quite a bit of infantry, just divided up, because even though they're expensive, I also have very limited options. For instance, there's only one tank, the Tetrarch,
mm-hmm.
which is terrible as a tank. It's good against, it's more of it's a recce vehicle without recce.
Yeah.
But they dropped it out of a plane, so they landed it in a glider rather.
Yeah, and that goes with the theme of your army, right? So
yeah.
So yeah, like I guess there's the two sides of the coin. You field a lot of infantry and you have a lot of bodies. They might not be able to take hits, but you got a lot of them, so it's a little bit easier to play around and take some casualties, but still have bodies to play with, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you got the veterans, you're probably a bit more experienced. You're using cover a lot more for sure. You got to be a lot more tactical with what you want to do with them, right? Because like, even though you are a veteran, again, like that artillery piece or whatever we were talking about before, it can still take you out pretty easily, right?
Pretty big equalizer.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do have more staying power in general, but facing those type of things or tanks, there's definitely difficulties, which I kind of like that I have to be more mindful of what I'm doing. And nearly every game that I've played with those guys, it's looked like I was about to lose before turn 5. Turn 5 is where I win the game. Turn 5 and 6. Up to then, I just get punched in the face because all my guys have a lot of SMGs, and I'm humping it across the field. I'm getting to those objectives, but I'm just jogging there, and everybody else has weapons that can reach out and touch me, and I just get whittled down. And if I don't get whittled down enough, or to the point where I'm out, turn 5 and 6 is where I'll win, because once I do get into contact, you're toast.
That's where your army shows its mettle, right? Like,
yeah,
you take casualties, but your guys are so tough to take out. Not, you have the transport, right? But at the same time, when they come out, like, they're still hard to take out, those veterans. So it's definitely a great tactic, especially in your army. I've fought your army a few times, and yeah, it's tough as nails. So
I will say, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging. I am the break-evenest player of all. I have probably exactly a 50-50 win-loss, so take what I say with a grain of salt, but...
Good stuff. But going on the next question, actually, you touched base on it, which is good. So one of the other questions I usually ask myself when I'm building the list is, how am I going to deal with armor / tanks, right? Yeah. Some factions don't have a great amount of equipment for taking out armor. Granted, this is with the idea that you're playing just whatever era against, whatever early, late, mid against each other, right? So like, I play early French. We did not have very much good stuff to take out armor, right? Yeah. And when an opponent goes and fields a medium to heavy tank, it's hard to deal with. So that's one of the questions is how do I deal with it? And a lot of times it's for me, it's use your cover, use your dense terrain, and dense terrain actually completely blocks your line of sight. Use the cover, just force him to pretty much waste his turn, right? Like, if he can't see anything to shoot, he's a point sink pretty much, right?
Yeah, so, exactly. That's one of the other aspects of armor is its high points cost. So, for instance, like a Tiger tank, I can get 2 or 3 of my airborne squads for a Tiger tank.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can ignore it, that's effectively eliminated its effectiveness.
Yeah, and there's a thing to say with these large tanks too, right? Like, they usually pack a lot of machine guns, right? Medium machine guns. That's a lot of damage. Again, a Tiger is what is it? I think it's 6 shots machine gun.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
right. So you got your hull mounted, you got your turret mounted, and then you got your pintle mount. So
But don't use the pintle.
don't use the yeah.
Andy will know about that.
That's a different story for a different time. But yeah, so like you either try to use the cover and ignore them, or if you are fortunate enough with certain armies, like the Americans, Germans as well, Soviets have it too, I believe. But you have, bazookas and Panzerschrecks and Panzerfausts.
My little Piat, I have in my army before this book, spoiler, had a Piat team, and that Piat has paid for itself 100 times over. That terrible little marshmallow launcher has destroyed more points in armor than I think anything else in any of my armies put together. And it's always cool. It's always fun because I have such a low range with that weapon to kind of sneak them around the battlefield, finally get my opportunity and run out into the open because I have to get the best shot possible, take the shot, and everybody is on their, biting their fingernails, as to whether or not the shot's going to go through. And I'm stuck in the open if I miss. All that tank has to do is turn around and shoot me, and I'm toast. But I've had it work out for me so many times, and it's one of my favorite things. Despite it technically on paper, it's not really shouldn't be that effective, but
yeah, they either shine or they don't, right?
Yeah.
Like I've had it too, where I remember one of the missions, you come from a different edge than your opponent, and I remember rolling up with my what is it, IS-2, I think it is, and rolling up on a Tiger, and I took my shot, and I missed, of course.
Yeah.
And then my opponent came from the other board edge, within range, and took me out with a Panzerschreck. So, it happens. You also have your heavy anti-tank, medium anti-tank guns, right? So you do have options. Early war anti-tank rifles tend to be fairly effective.
They're actually sorry to interrupt there, but
nope, it's all good.
I really like them. They're a cheap choice. They're effective against infantry. They're easy to sneak around and move around, and they're kind of just fun. It's a giant ass gun rifle that you shoot at the enemy. It just looks cool. And I mean, if you're playing Soviets had a gajillion of them.
Yeah, I think they have the option to take 3 teams as one choice.
Yeah.
So it's a bonus. It's almost, it's funny because like they're meant to take out light tanks and vehicles, but it's almost, you almost use them as a sniper at times, right? Like no, you're not hitting on the 3 like a sniper does, but you got the range and you're getting a bonus to damage. So,
they can really be a thorn in the side.
Yep.
They're a lot harder to hide from or ignore than say an anti-tank gun, like a field piece.
Yeah.
Just because of their mobility, they're infantry, so they can just hoof it wherever they want, really.
Not to mention they're a small team.
Yeah.
Right.
So they're harder to hit, also.
Yeah. Exactly. So there's a couple options for that. Whatever your flavor is, but you got other tanks as well, right? If you want to field some tank in your army, there's tons of choice, especially if you're playing some of the major factions, right? But there's some good ones out there. Depending what you're playing, depending what you want to fit in your army, depending on the era you're playing, There's options. I think majority of armies, I'm going to say, have medium anti-tank guns. And then, of course, some of the larger factions have, the heavy anti-tank guns. So, yeah, it's the thing with them too, though, is they're like glass cannons. Some tanks, right? It's you got a big gun on you, you fire it, you only got one shot with it.
Yeah.
Right. So half the time I miss.
Yeah.
Right. So I tend to stick with anti-tank guns. They're cheaper.
Yeah, but when you get into those heavy anti-tank guns, for instance, like the 17 pounder, which is a great anti-tank gun, but it cost nearly the same as a Sherman tank.
Yep, that's true.
So depending on what you're doing, maybe a tank is a better option. But I do like them, and they're kind of just cool.
They are, especially when you can do sound effects with them on the board.
Oh yeah. I'm all about sound effects. Anybody who plays me has known.
Yeah. So got another point here too with that is when you are building your armies and you're thinking about kind of like the missions that are out there that you can play, do you need some kind of mobility to accomplish your mission?
Yeah, and some of the missions are specifically geared that way. Some of the scenarios, I can't remember off the top of my head the name of it, but the scenario where essentially the attacker has to drive off the opposite board edge, which is a real hassle for my para army, who has to run across the board on foot to make it across. So even if I start as far out as I can, it's going to take me 5 turns or 4 turns moving just to do it without doing anything else. So there comes turn 5 again for me. I don't win until turn 5. But yeah, so it can be a real challenge. But then again, as the defender on that scenario, I'm actually pretty decent when they have to come to me. So it's kind of fun. And in fact, my buddy Dustin with his LRDG army, that's the long range desert group. That's his army's jam. They're all in trucks. They can all riff across the table. The trucks have like a gajillion, shots per truck. They have like 3 machine guns, I think, on them.
Yeah, it's a tough army to deal with. I remember the first time I came across it, and I was like, "Holy smokes!"
It's literally the anti-airborne army. It's for my list. It is the bane.
Yeah, but it is a cool looking themed
cool
army, right? And that's the great thing about the game is you can do that.
Yeah, and again, back to the original, concept, historically themed. Dustin did a lot of research and pulled off a really sweet looking army as the LRDG, which I haven't seen before. Now I've seen a couple since then, but he did this one a few years ago. And he even there wasn't even rules. There was rules on for download that they put out, that Warlord put out, that he was able to get, and that's all they had.
Yeah, no, it's pretty neat because going back to the transport, like the mobility, he's also working on the U.S. Marines.
Yeah,
I believe.
Yeah,
and he has transports with that army as well.
Yeah, really sweet looking transports. And my Canadian Scottish regiment, my other Canadian army, I have them all loaded into universal carriers. So, well, it's one. I have a metric ton of options in that army, but that's the way I like to play them. It's just kind of a fun choice, and it's the exact opposite of my airborne army.
Yeah,
So I do like that.
and the thing with the mobility of these units and transports we're talking about, um, a lot of times too is because your transports can carry a capacity. A lot of times you also see players will pack a flamethrower unit in one of these transports, and I mean, both me and Jason know flamethrowers can be devastating in the game, right?
Yeah.
So they'll zip up, and when they get a chance, they'll unload, and that flamethrower will take out a unit, or it can even take out some armor, right?
Oh yeah, flamethrowers can be devastating. But again, it's like my Piat. It's when it works, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But you got to get up close. So there's the getting there, and then when you pop out, you got to count on that dice roll to work for you. Because if it doesn't, there's no way they're going to ignore you.
Yeah, you're pretty much toast.
Yeah, they're gonna take you out. So you got that one shot, but when it works, it's spectacular. And I've had a flamethrower take down, large tanks. I've had it wipe out squads. More often though, I've had it, you know, burp out, a Zippo worth
Mhm.
of fuel and then get shot and killed.
Yeah, no, there's a few options. Like you got to think about, okay, is it like going to be transporting a vital unit to get into position to deal some damage, or is it going to be moving to get this unit closer to an objective that I need to take back into my own line, or again, am I going to zip across the board, try to use a road, to my advantage to actually get into the zone, his opponent's zone, and then off the board to score those points.
Mm-hmm.
If your whole army's like that, oh, you probably have the game.
Yeah.
I found like I've taken transports. Usually I take one, and it's usually to deliver some of my French dragoons, just to get them into position into some heavy cover to utilize their machine guns.
Yeah.
And then usually my transport gets blown to smithereens, right? So,
Yeah.
um,
And that's one of the risks with transports too. Yeah, they're really great at getting you up, but maybe you're playing a scenario where you don't need mobility
mhm.
and you've just sunk, you know, if you have a bunch of transports, you sunk 300 points into them or whatever you did, and that's 300 points. That's not going to do a whole lot.
Yeah,
So there really is a give and take on all these
oh for
choices.
sure. But yeah, it's something to think about, like when you're building an army. Um,
But it is fun, and you get to make truck sounds every time you move.
no, it's definitely, if you're playing, if you're first few times playing or whatever, I'd suggest definitely trying different units like that. Stuff out of the ordinary. There's also the nice ability of having multiple guns that your passengers can actually use to fire with.
Yeah,
And like the Germans have a lot of half tracks that are actually pretty tough to knock
yeah,
out.
their Hanamags are can be beefy, but they're also quite expensive.
Yes, exactly. But that's a German. The German army is like that too, right? They're not a cheap army points wise
No.
to play, but they do have a lot of benefits to their army. So, but yeah, we got going forward. We also have some stuff about is your, and I think we've touched base on this already actually with the infantry, but is your army able to sustain a drawn out combat, and or are you going with numbers to try to win? And this goes back to the troops and infantry and the experience level of your army. I tend to like to try to go with uh, regular units. They're not super expensive like veterans, but they can still do well. But they're not super cheap like inexperience, and you're already starting at a little bit of a disadvantage, but you have tons of them, right?
Yeah,
So
I like regulars, just they're more balanced. I mean, obviously, I play veterans with my airborne, but you have to. It says right there that they have to be taken as veterans.
yeah,
And obviously, for that army, it fits the theme and it works with the tactics. But in general, with my other armies, I nearly always go with just regulars across the board. A, because I'm slow and can't remember a lot. So if I have everything the same, then it's
jeez,
easy. I don't have to remember, oh, that squad is the veterans and these guys are the, ugh, forget it. I go all regular or all veteran.
I gotcha. I
But
gotcha.
there is certainly an advantage to regular over inexperience. The inexperience, I find, just, I mean, you might have a lot of them, but they're just going to die in droves.
No, definitely.
But then again, maybe it fits the theme. Maybe you're doing a, you know, a Soviet conscript style army, and that's what you got, and that's fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. 150 bamboo spearmen as well, you know?
Oh my god, yeah,
Yeah. No thanks. But you know what I'm talking about.
yeah.
It's a lot of bodies.
It's a lot of painting
Yeah,
too.
that too. So, with these questions and whatnot, and I got one more, and then what we'll do is we'll actually kind of move on to um, the Canadian sector, British sector, um, army and book and whatnot. But
Sure.
so before we go into that, so the last question I kind of asked myself is, do I have the weapons to deal with hard units? So like I said, veterans, heavy tanks, you know, again, against a heavy veteran list. The one thing I'd like when I'm playing my French, is I have a lot of bodies. They might be regular, they might be inexperienced. Guys see that, but I got mortars. I have medium artillery pieces, right? And I've decimated units with those artillery pieces.
Yeah, you throw basketballs across the table.
Yeah.
It hardly seems fair.
So so you know, it's something you wonder about. Something you gotta ask yourself when you're building it. Can I fit that in? You know, flamethrower units are good for that, but they're one trick ponies kind of thing. Mortars are they're, you know, people kind of 50-50 with them, right? Because just what you need to hit with them.
Yeah, the six to hit, unless they're sitting still. But usually, when you start targeting people, they'll move or they'll target your mortar,
Yep.
make you change targets, you know.
See,
But
and
when they do hit, they can be pretty devastating, and mortars are pretty cheap.
yep, yep.
Like I
I
actually, oh sorry,
No, no, go ahead.
I like the light mortars. They're not particularly good, but they're super cheap. I can throw down a template where I can't, uh, might not be able to reach with other weapons.
Yeah, and I go with like my French is a medium mortar, and I love using them to counter enemy anti-tank or artillery pieces, right? Because if I'm throwing it at you and you're not moving, it's just getting easier and easier for me to hit,
Oh yeah,
right? And that's kind of what they're mainly used for, or that medium machine gun team. You're either staying put, getting crushed, or you're moving, right?
yeah. Area denial, right? You can your mortars and your artillery are really good at making me not want to sit on the objective,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's where they're really devastating, when I have to go up to an objective and try to hold it for X amount of turns or whatever the the thing is, and you're just lobbing those things at me, I'm I'm gonna die. Especially veterans. I happen to be exactly the size of most of those templates.
Yeah. And
Those
see,
squad.
and I'm a fan of the howitzer, right? Especially with my French.
Yeah,
So not only do I have the 2 artillery pieces, which I always take the medium howitzers, um, but if I am taking a tank, it's usually my char, and it has a light howitzer on its hull as well. So, in that army, I have like 4 pie plates to throw at you. So,
yeah,
um, when they hit, they hit. And I've seen a 15-man squad of Japanese infantry just get completely evaporated by
yeah,
2 howitzers, right? And it's just like, well, you did have them in the open, but you got to take those shots. So, but, and not to mention the pins.
yeah. Pins can be devastating. And that's one thing about uh, anti-tank capability you were mentioning. Can you take out those tanks? Well, maybe you don't have to. Maybe you can just pin it so that it can't do much, right? You throw the pins on, they have to do their morale check to be able to do anything, you know?
Yep, exactly. And it happens a lot in the game, so it
Yeah.
makes it interesting.
Yeah, and there's nothing more frustrating as the guy getting pinned to have your fancy beefed up, you know, death wagon stuck,
Mm-hmm.
stuck doing nothing.
No, exactly. So yeah, and with that, I hope that kind of gives you guys a little bit of insight on things to think about for building lists and building armies. And also don't forget, and I don't think I mentioned this, but easyarmy.com is a great tool for building your armies and saving your platoons. They have all the lists on there, and they continuously update. So yeah, check it out. If you have army lists that you kind of want to send my way or whatnot, you can always hit us up on the Facebook at Trident Wargaming. So yeah, check that out. I'm always eager to talk shop with people about the game and whatnot. But going into the D-Day British Canadian sector, so the new campaign book that came out, obviously there's been a lot of hype for us here in Canada about it. I think almost all the stores have probably sold out of the book, so it's pretty neat. It's there's a lot of stuff in it. There's definitely a lot of stuff in it.
Yeah, it's like 192 pages or something.
Yeah, it's thick. It is definitely thick. Nice thing about it is there's like 13 scenarios for it. There's the Canadian Army is in it. There's like 11 pages of that. There's like 6 new theater selectors for the Canadians. There's like the Canadian Infantry Division 1943 to 1944, Canadian Airborne, the Armored Division. So a lot of choices there to play around with. The nice thing too is like with the Canadians, and I'll let Jason get into this when he's doing comparing it to his army and whatnot. Is they have some new special rules for them as well. And not only is it just the Canadians that are in there, but like there's new rules and stuff and armies for the British as well, like the Inter-Allied Commandos. Like they have a section for them. They have new theater selectors for the British and Commonwealth as well, and even some new units like I think the Wasp 2C, I believe, is one of them.
Yeah, the Wasp is in there.
So
which, if you don't know, is a universal carrier with a giant ass flamethrower on it.
yeah. So definitely some new units. Even the Germans got some new units, new theater selectors. Um, they have the Luftwaffe Field Division in there as well, and then the German 12 SS, the Hitlerjugend army in there as well. So it's definitely be played through the campaign book with. So definitely a lot of fun. But right now we kind of are going to concentrate more on the Canadian Army and some of the special rules and kind of how they compare to what Jason was running before. So the Army
Before,
special rules.
yeah, they got two new special rules. All Canadian infantry are dogged,
Mm-hmm.
which means essentially for 1 point per infantry infantry model, you can upgrade them to stubborn, which is super good for standard infantry.
Yeah, your regular and your vets, I believe, get the stubborn, right?
Yeah, yeah, for
And
1 point.
and then there's a second part to that too, the inexperienced infantry.
Can be
Um,
upgraded to green
so
for
that
1
yeah, so they have a chance to become
right?
regular, which is pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. It's super frustrating when you're playing against Russians who have that option too for some of their units, and they get upgraded all of a sudden for free. You know, you might even decide not to shoot at that unit, knowing that they might get that.
They might upgrade. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've done that. I've done that.
And the other special rule is they have staunch hatred for SS. So if you're fighting against SS army, you count as fanatics in close combat.
Mm-hmm.
So that with stubborn actually against SS makes them pretty effective, which is fair, because the SS suck.
Yeah, they do.
So there's a little bit of a history there, but
Yeah,
and
it's
it's fun that they applied the rules. Plus, you still get all the standard British rules. You don't have access to the Commonwealth rules where you're allowed to pick one of those 6 options
mhm.
anymore, but you still get the free artillery observer special rule and the what is the other British one? The artillery reroll, right? On the preparatory bombardment chart or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. So those still apply. It's just these
These are in addition to, and I think it's actually,
the national characteristic
yeah,
rules, pretty much. So
that's actually a pretty good upgrade for my Canadian forces. Not to mention my first Canadian Parachute Battalion Army that I had forever. Now they for 1 point additional, I can upgrade them to be tough fighters as well as stubborn,
yeah,
which in combat is going to make them even crazier. Uh, Essentially, and the stubborn rule has always been there for the airborne, but it's nice that it's still there. Uh, the other thing is they have a new Canadian Tank Hunter section that the airborne and other Canadian armies can take, which has the option to upgrade up to 4 members of that squad section to have Piats. So instead of running with my one team, I can run with that one team and a section with up to 4 more Piats. And unlike the Panzer Shreks, these are multiple use. They're not single use. So that can be pretty devastating. It adds a little bit of a, and by a little bit I mean it, adds a lot of a anti-armor punch to my army that I didn't necessarily always have.
Yeah, and they're like they start off at 90 points and they're veterans on top of that, which
Yeah,
you probably would always take veterans anyways for them.
you have to for the airborne.
Oh, there you go. They have SMGs and tank grenades already.
Yeah,
So for 15 points, adding the Piat, that's pretty good considering like adding a light machine gun is usually about 20 points,
yeah.
right?
No, it's a super cheap option. The Piat team is 50 points, right? So
Yeah.
I
No,
can have
it's
four, you know, for that amount.
you'll probably see that all the time,
Yeah, it's too
right?
good not to take, really.
Yeah.
And it does fit the theme. The Canadian Army uh, deployed with a platoon, an anti-tank platoon, with the um, parachute battalion. So they would be dispersed amongst the various units for certain attacks or engagements. So it makes sense anyway. It's not just something to make it stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And my other Canadian Army, my Canadian Scottish Regiment, and for all other Canadian armies, they added a scout sniper, which basically is a sniper, but also has all the same things that snipers do, but also can reveal hidden units at 18 inches instead of 12.
Okay, the recon troops. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the scout sniper too,
Hmm.
unless I read that wrong.
Oh, scout sniper and one scout spotter. Yeah, sniper behind enemy lines, recon troops. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and the scout section, which has that same rule, and their sergeant can act as an intelligence officer, which is option you can take in the book uh, for your army. And essentially, once per game, you can act on intelligence that this guy may have gathered, and uh, you roll a dice depending on whether or not he's regular or veteran, or inexperienced or veteran. You'll have a plus minus, but it's on a 4+. You get to choose the dice out of the bag. So who gets to go first, which might be vital, you know?
No, that is very true. That is very true. We've seen that in the past, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's, biting their fingernails to see what dice comes out. Well,
And you get to pick. So
yeah.
there you go. Plus, they have the spotting hidden units within 18 instead of 12.
Wait,
And they have, I believe, the what the heck is that rule? The outflank rule, or
the behind enemy lines kind
yeah,
of
behind enemy lines rule.
pretty much they can like infiltrate, right?
Yeah, so they can really, and they can take a bunch of SMGs.
Huh.
They're Canadian, so they're going to be. You can upgrade them to be stubborn. They have the, because of the dogged rule. Uh, just a, it sounds like a really versatile unit to have. A nice option
No,
for
definitely,
sure.
definitely. Yeah, they've got quite a few different units in the army now. Well, just the army period. Like finally, they got
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
we've been using the British, which is fair, I guess. Most of our equipment is British. Most of our tactics are British, but it's nice to to reflect the contribution,
Mm-hmm.
and be living in Canada, being here, it's we kind of want to play that army officially, instead of ad hocing it.
No, for sure. For sure. And I know a lot of the guys here in town have picked up this book. So it's great. Even if they don't play it, they have a lot of good stuff in here to check out and read up on and whatnot. So
Yeah, and like with all the books, I really like these theater books. They have a lot of you know, background information. Even on the scenarios, they explain what the scenario is kind of from, what it's supposed to represent.
mm-hmm.
You know, and then they tell you all the rule stuff, and then they give you an after action report from the real engagement that they're supposed to be, you know, representing, which is kind of neat. So you get the whole idea of what was and what to a certain degree you're trying to replicate or play out.
Yeah, and even in this book they have there's a mission where you're going after Whitman,
Yeah,
which is
I
pretty
believe
neat.
that's Charnwood, right?
I think so. Just yeah, kill Whitman. Stop the advance. The death of the Black Baron.
Mm,
So
yeah.
there's like two parts to it, two missions in one. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, you have those options to play those fun games. It looks like one of them is a possibly a tank war game by the looks
Yeah,
of
it
it,
should be. Yeah.
which is pretty cool for that. Gives some more flavor to it. But yeah, there's a lot like did did the British have um multiple launchers in their book? In the
No, I
regular?
don't think they do. So yeah, the Canadians have the land mattress.
Yeah, the rocket launcher.
Yeah,
So
which
that's
the multi-launcher rules are super good.
mm-hmm.
So doesn't hurt to throw one in if that's what you're looking for. Plus, they look kind of fun.
Yeah, I've had them used against me before in different armies. But, but yeah, going through the rest of the kind of the army, there's you got some tanks, the Churchill and the Ram cruiser tank and the Canadian Sherman tanks. You got your hybrid and your VC Firefly. Some Stuart tanks, a Ram Badger. So open topped, has a hull mounted flamethrower. So that's interesting.
Yeah, we were all about the flamethrowers. Really, we
Yeah.
loved them. Apparently,
Then you got Skink double A tank, your AA tank. That's a different one. Some turret mounted autocannons.
yeah, it looks super cool.
Yeah, but they've got a fair bit. Like they've actually made it into like it's an actual army now, which is great. You know,
Yeah,
um, you have a lot of options to play with.
and they give you the options. I know the book is technically it's the Canadian and British sectors of Normandy,
Yeah.
but they gave you options for Canadian Army 1939 to 1903.
Yep.
So which obviously is way before Normandy. So, but they gave you the options there, in so you can do the earlier stuff. You know, you can do Dieppe, or you can uh, do Italy with the Canadian Sicily and Italy with the Canadian forces from this book,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of nice too. I like too. They also gave an option for the Canadian officers to be used with the British Army, uh, which is something that we did. We had basically on loan for the purpose of gaining experience for our officers, uh, loaned them to the British Army, and they were deployed with, as officers in the British Army and in other theaters where Canada wasn't involved because we landed on Dieppe and then we had nothing really infantry fighting wise until Sicily. So they were gaining experience through that program, and now British armies can use Canadian officers, which they get the dogged rule, so their officer is stubborn,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of fun.
Yeah, it's kind of intertwined, right? So
Yeah.
it's pretty neat. They've got some good options in this book. Probably one of their better campaign books, I'd say, for what they came out with in this book.
Yeah, yeah, I like
So
it.
Warlord Games, keep it up if you're listening. It's awesome. I know me and Jason both love these campaign books. We have tons of them. I think I might actually have all of them except for one or two. But
Even if I don't intend on playing any of the armies from it, I like just reading them. So
exactly, it gives us.
and they've been getting just better and better. With
Yep.
the second edition, especially their campaign books are 160 to 190 pages long. That's nearly as long as the main rule book.
Yeah, and they
So
have all those little extra rules, right?
yeah,
That
yeah,
they
they
bring
throw,
in.
like digging in uh,
Foxhole entrenchment.
foxholes and entrenchments and fortifications and minefields.
Yeah,
How all of that stuff works, which they've had in other books too. So you might say, oh, well, they're kind of just reusing content, but at the same time, it's nice if I don't have another theater book. This is the one I buy. I have all those, you know,
yeah,
to
exactly.
throw into the game.
No, that's exactly right. So it's good. It's awesome. I know there was some rumors of they're supposed to be coming out with some kind of campaign content, like stuff for you to actually be able to use to run a campaign.
Oh, fun.
So and I think it might, I can't quite remember, but again, like I said, rumors. So don't take my word for it, but hopefully we'll see stuff come out for it. But yeah, great book. Definitely be looking into it, to building something out of it myself. Probably even get some games going on against Jason here when eventually we can play again.
When the plague has evaporated.
But I know there's probably another 5 guys in our community that are playing right out of this book, So yeah, I think we're kind of getting to the end of it here. So again, thanks for joining me here, Jason. This is awesome.
Yeah, no, it was fun.
And
Hey, I just thought super quick. The rule of cool is number one rule for picking an army. I didn't mention it, and it should be mentioned. Historical, ahistorical, pick something you like. Don't pick something because you think you should.
Definitely, it's definitely the way to go, and that goes for really any game, right?
Yeah.
Any game at all. So I know me and Jason are like that all the time. So
Totally, 100%. The second thing, I know you did an episode a bit ago. You mentioned stuff about it, but I wanted to bring it up. Be the opponent that you want to fight against or that you want to play against. That's it. Don't be a wiener. Make it fun. Game. And,
no.
and as far as history goes, for learning about Canada and the war, Mark Zelke does a series of books, Juno Beach, Holding Juno, and Breakout from Juno, which are amazing. You'll learn, it's the most in-depth books looking at, day by day, hour by hour for the Juno landings and the build-up. Kind of off topic, but if you're looking at doing historical versus non-historical, you need to know what the historical aspect is.
No, definitely, and that's the thing with BoltAction, right? Is most of the guys are right into all the info as it is, right? So it's great if you got, even if you're just getting into the game and you like the World War II era, and you're interested in that, but you're not quite sure about a lot of the info. Just like Jason just said here, he's willing to share that info. There's tons of info out there. There's tons of guys that have tons of historical knowledge. Talk away, check it out.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
When we're allowed to, go hang out again, if you ever see me and you don't want me to stop talking, just bring up something random historical. Good luck.
Oh, that's too awesome. But yeah, like I said, thanks again, Jason, for being out.
No worries. Thanks, Andy.
This is fun. We'll have you on again for sure. I know there'll be quite a few episodes for BoltAction. We're going to try to ramp up on that. Probably try to kind of do a little bit of army overviews for players, and whatnot. Some of the new content coming out. Hopefully I'll be able to do some unboxing stuff of the gazillion models I have behind me. So, and also thank you guys, the listeners, for joining us today as well. I hope that you found some of this helpful. If you're, just getting into it and you're kind of new at it and want some info. Again, if you got pictures and stories or whatever of your armies, please hit us up on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram, hashtag Trident Wargaming. Do it up. I love seeing your stuff. I got lots of stuff on the go as well, but I really do enjoy seeing your guys' stuff. And with that, pretty much we'll end the episode, and we will catch you guys on the next one. Trident Wargaming. Build it, paint it, play it.